Good morning, everyone. My name's Greg Keily. I reside in Australia, and Wendy approached me after somewhere along the line. One of my posts on a near-death experience came up, and it's definitely changed my life, and it's allowed me to understand that my purpose was designed for me at conception, which all my clients understand after coming and seeing me as well. But I'll give you a rundown on myself and talk briefly about the near-death experience. It seems like there's a lot of people in that holistic range here, so I'm very overwhelmed with your presence. I can feel huge energy through here. I'm 54 years old now, and I've had probably about 42 jobs in my life. I've entered into the world with a massive self-sabotage attachment to my unconscious, and my superconscious has been laughing along the way. Basically, I was in the military. I was a Navy clearance diver, which is similar to a Navy SEAL in the US, and we were performing illegal ship boardings down in the Antarctic Ocean, which is right down the bottom of the world. And at the time, it was very, very cold, obviously. It was actually so cold that when the waves hit the side of the ship, the water instantly froze. So it looked like it was snowing upwards. It looked like we were just in another planet. And it was about 2 a.m. in the morning, 17-metre seas, massive seas. The ship was disappearing in the seas. And we decided to take a ship. And as we got the call, the way we were doing it was rather than we were going by boat because it was too cold. The rotors on the helicopters would freeze up. So what they would do is they would lower a boat into the water, and the boat would take maybe 15 of us. It had a rigid hull and inflatable sides called a RIB, rigid inflatable boat. And they would lower one into the water, and it would drive alongside the ship, this frigate, Navy frigate called HMAS Anzac. And we're out there in the open there. Boat comes alongside the ship, and they lower down a rope with a shackle on it, and it hooks on, and the guy lets go of the throttle, and it pulls the boat in alongside the ship as it's motoring along about 10 knots, 10 miles an hour. So the way for us to get down from way up on the top of the ship down into the boat, usually you would use a ladder, but the ship, it was just going up and down. So the fastest way was using what they call a fast rope. And a fast rope is a big, thick, fluffy rope that we use to jump out of helicopters. You might have seen it on the TV where guys jump out and they swirl around a rope and land down on a ship. Well, we were doing that into the boat that was getting towed alongside, and because it was very fast, it's more like a fast control or a controlled fast fall, really. You can't stop. So the first lot of guys went down into the boat, and then the guy in the boat went forward, and they unhooked the shackle, and it went and sat behind the Navy frigate. Is everyone following me here? Yeah. Pull me up if you just go, what? I don't know where you are. So then the second boat goes in, comes alongside, hooks up to the shackle, and is getting towed alongside. And I'm the lucky one who is the first guy over the side. And I look down, and the guy's giving me the thumbs up. So I jump out. Now, I'm happy to show photos and everything there if you want me to share my screen later. But basically, I was wearing a big orange suit, like a snow suit, big boots we had on. I had a lot of different automatic weapons. I had a helmet and some goggles on, and a backpack with 3 days rations. Plus I had a massive sledgehammer attached to my back to smash in doors in case we couldn't get into the bridge and take control of the ship. So as I'm going down this rope, remember, I can't stop. It's just a controlled descent. One of the waves hits the sides of the ship, pushes the boat out that was getting towed, and the shackle snaps, and the boat goes back, and I go straight into the water. So we're heading along 10 knots, 10 miles an hour in the middle of the Antarctic Ocean, and I'm getting towed alongside the ship at 10 miles an hour. And there was, everything sort of slowed down quite considerably. I won't go too, I'm just looking at the time, I won't go too much into this, but I'm happy to talk about it later, but I'll talk about my transition. Anyway, long story short, I get sucked under the Navy Frigate into the propellers, and the panic that overcame me was quite intense. Water was freezing. I was sucking in a lot of water, and my eyeballs were freezing, and as I was trying to see in the blackness, and I kicked out with my right leg, and I hit something solid. It must have been the side of the ship, the hull, and I pushed out, and I popped out the back, and I saw the ship sailing off into the darkness in the middle of the Antarctic, and I felt this huge relief because my fear was to get chopped up by the propellers. I don't know how I popped out of that. Then the story, or then what happened was the first boat that was full of the fellas, they tried to pick me up, and they said that I could hear the communications. I had something like this in my ear, and I could hear them saying, "We can see him, we can see him." So to paint the picture, the 17-metre swell, 2 a.m. I'm trying to stay afloat with all this gear on, and these guys are coming to pick me up, but the swell was so big they were sort of surfing sideways down the wave, and they ran over me and hit my helmet, pushed me under. I fought my way back up to the top again, and then the boat that I was supposed to jump in tried to do the same thing, tried to save me. Same thing, ran over me, pushed me under, and after this lasted about 7 minutes. After I was trying to struggle to stay on top of the water, all my joints started freezing up, and I started sinking. And I remember the panic was intense during all of this. It was all as if everything had slowed down considerably. It was like it took a few weeks for all this to happen. And then I remember this like the panic was intense. I was sinking in the water, into the blackness, and drinking in a lot of water, and I felt this massive calm come over me. It was like all of a sudden this big warm blanket just came around me, and I started transitioning from mass to quantum level, like to spiritual level, and the blackness, it was like a liquid just coming over my eyes, just blackness, very calming and warm. And when that happened, I went, my body no longer exists. I just actually did an interview last week with someone who really went into this, and I don't want to go too much into it because it'll take a lot of time, but when I transitioned over, I felt as if time just didn't exist. There was darkness everywhere, but there was an intense love all around me. My body didn't exist at all. And I made out there was quite a lot of entities there, but not from this life. And there was overwhelming joy. I felt that they were excited that they were excited I was back. And I'm sort of rushing through this rather than explaining it all, but I'm happy to do that afterwards if you've got time. Anyway, I'm there and I'm feeling this love and this calmness and this blackness all around me, and these entities. There was maybe a dozen, maybe 15 of them, and it was as if I was just paused in space and time. And then all of a sudden, I've woken, I've come to, and I'm on the boat. And what they'd actually done is they jumped overboard in the swell, hanging on to each other, and they'd formed a human chain, and they were thrashing around in the darkness. And one of them grabbed the back of my backpack, and they'd pulled me back up on board, and I was unaware of this. Anyway, they pulled me back onto the ship. I had hypothermia, so my body temperature was 33 to 34 degrees Celsius when it should be 37. So I was probably should have been dead then. Anyway, I jump back onto the ship, and they took my gear off to try and warm my temperature, and I blacked out and transitioned again. So at that time, I went back to that stage, and I was a lot closer with all these entities. They were there was a lot of love there, and they were very encouraging with me. And I felt as if I had no control over this. I was just going. Now, in the background, I heard another voice. Sorry, I got something in my eye. I heard another voice, and it was a lady's voice. It was the most beautiful voice I've ever heard. And she kept saying, "It's okay, darling, you can come back, you can come back." And it was off in this distance of this darkness. But I was going the opposite direction with all these entities. It was like you could see, I could make out an outline, but I could feel, everything was feeling more than what you can see. And everyone was happy, and I felt happy and full of love, but this voice kept coming back saying, "Come back, darling, it's okay, you can come back." And all of a sudden, I just started going towards that voice. And then I came back, and I felt that this lady was just stroking my hand. She was a female officer, and she had the mask on. And I just came back, and just the love that she had for me brought me back this way. But I felt love. I felt like I was all getting from one side to the other, and I had no control. Anyway, I came back. Thought nothing of it. That my body temperature about 5 hours later, they brought it back. And then the next day, about 6 hours later, we went and stormed a ship. And it was a big joke. Yeah, Greg went swimming with the fish and all that sort of stuff, as the military does. And nothing changed. Everything was fine. And about 12, then I kept going through jobs, this self-sabotage mode, relationships, everything. 6 months was probably the longest I could stay with anything. And I had no idea why, just who I was. It all starts becoming a bit more understandable later as I keep going. But about 12 years later, after that event, so I left the military. I joined the police. I became a police officer. I did very, very well, and I became a field training officer. So they would put all the new recruits with me that did come out, and I found that at major incidents that were happening, murders, deaths, shootings, all that sort of stuff, everything slowed down to that same level when I went overboard in that ship, and I was just adrenaline. And I found that I could see everything so clearly, and I'll explain that a bit later, and how our unconscious works that way, which most of you mightn't even know. But I felt if I went to an incident and someone was stabbed and came running towards me, it'd slow down, and I could see people in the background running away. I could see what color their hair was, what they were wearing, what their facial features were. Everything was just perfectly as if I was watching it on TV. And then it'd come back, and I'd concentrate and focus. And that happened many, many times as a police officer. Anyway, as I was saying, about 12 years later, I was driving into a car park with my family, like an underground car park. And you come down and you've got the toll there thing, and it lifts up and you go under. And it got dark in an underground car park. And all of a sudden, that same feeling started coming over my eyes. This blackness, this is like a thick liquid. And I started panicking again, going through exactly the same feeling as when I was drowning. And it was, I couldn't control it. It was, sweating, stop the car. My wife's going, "What's happening?" I'm going, I don't know. And in that, you got the fight, flight, or freeze mode. In the moment when I drowned, I was fighting. This time I was flighting. I got out of the car and I ran. I ran for daylight. And this just happened more and more and more. And it got so bad that I couldn't go to the shopping centres. Like, we have Woolworths and Coles here. It's like your Walmart over there. So you imagine you're walking through the doors and you're in the shopping centre, but you can't see a window. You can't see an exit. The same thing was happening. And it got so regular that the boys, I had a couple of kids. I came home after the accident and the incident, and I said to my wife, "We've got to have kids. I've got to have a purpose. You've got to leave something on this planet." And they were, by this time, they were getting into their 6-year-old, 7 or 10 years old, and they were saying, "Oh, Dad's having another incident." And I had no control over this. It was, there I was. It was very embarrassing. I was trained to be a very professional person. I took control of major scene events and everything like that. And all of a sudden I had no control over what I was experiencing. And this went on and this went on, and it got so bad, it went into a lot of anxiety, depression. This dark cloud came over me, looking for ways out, lots and many suicidal thoughts, driving off into bushlands with hoses and saying everyone's going to be better, making sure my insurance was all up to date. And then for some reason, when it would come to the stage, I would break down and cry and couldn't control it. Couldn't take my life, and it all made sense at the end. But so I went through years of psychologists and psychiatrists, and I have nothing against them. If there is anyone here, everyone has their own part, but it just wasn't working for me. Every time I would tell this story, I would get emotionally charged and fuel that energy again, and it would all come back. And a friend of mine said, who I helped many years, I became a coach, life coach, and in the meantime I was struggling with all this in the background. And he said, "How's your headspace, Greg?" And I said, "Man, it's no good." He said, "I want you to try a fellow that does hypnotherapy." And I laughed. I said, "Hypnotherapy? It's I'm not clucking like a chicken on a stage here. This is different, mate." And he said, No, this guy's different." So I went and saw this fellow, and after around 3 sessions, so about 3 hours, 6 hours worth of hypnotherapy, I no longer had these incidents. I remember the third one there. He said, "Okay, well, how do you feel?" And I said, "I feel like there's this massive inside me, but also this weight's just gone, and I feel as if I'm really light." And he said, "Well, come on, we're going into the car park." So we start walking down to the car park, and here's the thing, like this had been going on for like 20 years, these panic attacks, and they'd just gotten so bad. As I was walking down the steps to the car park, I felt this excitement that I didn't know what was going to happen, but my body started going into shock again. And I was sweating, I was shaking. I was very fearful to open this door, and he's going, "Come on, we're going in there." And anyway, we go into this car park. He closes the door, and it's dark. It's cars parked everywhere. And I'm freaking out again, as I always have. But then it just left straight away. Almost as fast as it came on, it just left. And I was looking around, and I said to him, "It's just a car park." He said, "It's just a car park, isn't it, mate?" And I said, "Yeah, it is." And I'm crying, and this is massive relief. And then he said, "Go over in the dark corner there." So I went over the dark corner. I was going, "This is amazing. This is amazing." And from that day on, there was just no fuel of emotion behind the triggers. Does that make sense? So little things would trigger me going into a shopping center. I could feel my body would still react the same, but then there was no energy behind it, no emotion behind it to keep me spiraling downwards out of loss and control. So, so I've got a blank. So all right. So, I think I've told this story too many times. I've got a blank. So what was happening then is okay. Well, I had no fuel behind those sparks, but my body was still reacting the same way for about a month or so. So how long does it take to break a habit? 30 days, 40 days. After that time, I just got less and less and less, and then it was fine. I also found that I could not go above a 2nd-story building, because remember, I was jumping down. And so now I can go up, and I'm very cautious, but I can go up to the top of a building and look down and go, "Oh, a nice view," instead of before I was up against the wall going, I can't go anywhere near these heights. So long story short, I thought I had to study as much as this as possible, because I had so many friends that were going through similar um, unconscious challenges with PTSD, depression, anxiety, taking their lives. I lost quite a lot of friends through suicide in the military. And I thought, I have to do this to try and help people. So I studied as much as I could. I became a practitioner of hypnotherapy. I used the methods that I had learned. And it started really having some amazing results. So then I went further and I thought, okay, well, I need to understand the states of consciousness of why I was able to release this when I see so many people going through trauma, 20 years, 30 years after events. So I started studying a lot into quantum physics, quantum theory, quantum mechanics, and understanding the different states of consciousness that science states that we exist on this planet, which many of you, I've just had a few minutes with you, and I know that there's a few healers out there. No doubt you understand a lot more about this than I do, but I understood that prior to using that quantum theory, prior to existing in the mass, using Einstein's law of relativity, E equals mc squared, E is energy. Prior to becoming mass, we are all energy, and we're made up of those, carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, and oxygen, the subatomic level, as well as the mass. We exist in those different states of consciousness. So I studied as much as I could on that. I've learned quite a lot of different modalities, aligning people with their true purpose, their path, why they're here. And it enabled me to learn a lot about myself, on why I was sabotaging my life from the age of what I went back to through timeline regression. Hypnotherapy was about the age of 2. So something so simple as, my father wasn't, worked out my father was a narcissist, where everything I tried to do, I was an idiot. That's a stupid idea, boy. You've never done that before. Started evaluating all that and seeing that I played every sport known to man. I was a cleaner. I was selling multi-million-dollar properties to people. I was a police officer. I'd done everything. What I'd found was the simple fact that someone in authority of my youth had instilled their limiting beliefs and values. I had accepted them at an unconscious level. I consciously wanted a better life. Unconsciously, during those first conception to 7 years, my unconscious doesn't know the difference between right or wrong, truth or real. It just accepts what I'm born into. And this is what I find with so many clients now, is that they are limited by their adulthood and their life by what they experienced when they first came into this world, the limiting beliefs of the environment and the people in it. So I found that every time I was succeeding at something, I would always succeed, and then I would get to a level going, I have to leave the company, I have to leave this job, this career, I need to go and start at the bottom again. So I found that I was self-sabotaging careers and relationships, and then it got to the stage where I tried to sabotage my family, my wife, after 20 odd years, and I made sure that she found out that I was, trying to sabotage it. And she, I was very, very lucky. She said, no, we're going to work through this. So then I studied as much about that as I could, how our different states of consciousness, and bearing in mind that most of us, I'm not feeling that this is with you guys, but most of us get through our life on a conscious level. We focus on what's in front of us. Now, this conscious level, as we know, only runs 5% of our life. We've got 95% of our unconscious that's beating our heart and reproducing cells and growing an entire skeleton every 10 years and doing all this stuff, next energy level up. And when I talk to people, I say, how many people in your life have you met that you say, they say the right things, especially in relationships with women. A lot of abusive relationships, toxic relationships. I help women through a lot of rape from the age of 5 to 15, and serious trauma. Is that how many people that you meet that they say the right things to you, but you just know, you have this feeling they're just not right. There's just something not right about this person. It's our unconscious. It's our unconscious understanding that it exists in your entire central nervous system. It's your next energy level out that's pulsing out of us, because we're all forms of this energy, and we're all at this energy level, that we're feeling each other's energy. So I started coaching clients understanding that quantum level, that we exist in a spiritual level, or a level you cannot see, that subatomic level of quantum, and also a mass, as Einstein stated. So we can start tapping into more of what we feel rather than what the sight, sound, our 5 senses on this planet, because there's so much more to us than what we see in the mirror. Now, once we understand that, we can understand that our unconscious has accepted all the negative energy from when we were first conceived to 7 years old, because we couldn't defend ourselves, and people had, no matter what you were born into, we've adapted those limiting values and beliefs. So when we understood that, we could then close our eyes so we don't get distracted, and obviously we exist in these levels of consciousness, our superconscious being your higher self. It's very easy to connect to those and open ourselves up to those. So I then started just guiding people through their own trauma. They coach themselves through it. And I say this a lot, if anyone's watched that movie Back to the Future with Michael J. Fox, he goes back in time, changes something, it's no longer the same reality back where they are now. So we do a lot of that. We do a lot of timeline regression. We do a lot of leaving the body, connecting with your unconscious, superconscious. And actually I'm helping people at the moment that we're actually recoding their unconscious mind, their brain, that we're actually creating new motor neuron pathways for car accident victims that can no longer move an arm or have damage, and using that, tapping into that unconscious, or opening, I shouldn't say tapping in, unconsciously, sorry, opening up to our unconscious, we can start creating a lot of different pathways for message to go from the brain to the muscles. And I have clients that can't move and need a wheelchair or a walker to gardening after a few months. So it's amazing. It just blows me away that how powerful we are, and we all. But most of us are looking for things outside of us to make us better. And even the simple thought back in 1915 when quantum physics came out and became public, is that they were saying we are creators, we are not participators. So whatever is happening to us, as bad as it is, we are creating that from an unconscious level, because we accepted we couldn't, these limiting beliefs, when we were very, very young. And so when we started understanding that, we can let the emotions go. Remember, because what happened to me was once I let the emotions go, I learned lessons from that. Like, I'm not going to jump out of a ship anymore in the middle of the Antarctic Ocean. So I learned a lot from that. So everything becomes lessons rather than emotional trauma. And Jean was saying before that Hayley is traumatized by what's happening because she was there. If we just understand that the only reason she's going through that trauma, or we're having those negative experiences or triggers, is because she attached emotions to that event, because the event's still happening, isn't it? And if she's not there, or if I wasn't there jumping out of the ship, someone else would have been, and it would have happened anyway. the reason it's affected me so much longer, so many years later, is because I attached those emotions to that event. So if I can unconsciously go back and release those emotions, then nothing bothers me. So very little bothers me these days. There's no, we understand we put so much energy and focus on small things in this life. Traffic, got to get there on a certain time. All these things that we build up and we put this pressure on ourselves for. Bigger picture, it doesn't matter. Like I'm here earlier than I would have expected because that was the military trained into me. I am always there on time or before time. But if I'm late, I'm late. If a client's late, they're late. Like, why is it bothering me, these things? And I see what's happening over there in the States. I see Russia, the war over there, and it's devastating. Human beings are very, very toxic people, energy-wise, they can be. And I'll do what I can there, but it's not going to ruin my life because I'm not there. If I was there, it's a different story. But the world will continue to go around us as we are here for our purpose. And I understood now that from the day I was conceived, this is my purpose now, to go through all the shit I went through. Excuse my language. And this is what I say to people, that shit happens. We've all heard that. Shit just happens. It's not your shit. It's not my shit. It's just shit happening. We start making it our shit when we start attaching emotions to it and we let it into us, into our energy, because we're surrounded by negative energy everywhere. And that quantum world and science states that there's a set amount of energy in the universe at any one time. I can pull good energy and I can pull bad energy and I can push the same. So if and this is what I say to clients, if someone's putting you down or ridiculing you or saying you're no good or whatever's coming out of my mouth, you're fat, you're ugly, I can't believe you're wearing that or whatever, it's just my energy. Because Einstein says everything's energy. Thought is energy. And I'm creating that thought with my past experiences and I'm bringing it out as toxic energy by way of words, communication. But when we start understanding that's my energy, you can't control my energy, I can't control yours, I can control mine, then everyone is living their own path and their own energy based on their past. Does that make sense? So I no longer worry about what other people are saying to me or doing to me. It's all part of my path. I learn the lessons from it. I release the emotions from it. I'm this happy person. And then I can start attracting better things, better people, better opportunities, all that sort of stuff, because all that negative energy that my body absorbs, because remember what your body made up of, 70 to 80% water, it's a conductor of energy. So the first thing we do is we talk about releasing energy, and people just feel after 50 years, this amazing relief and release of all this energy that their body's built up, that their energy's kept within their realm of unconscious, that once we start releasing that, we can then open ourselves up and align ourselves with our true purpose. Things just start happening. Money comes in, offers come in, sponsors come in, whatever. Relationships come in. The right man comes in, the right female comes in. All of a sudden, everything starts aligning a lot better. So, yeah, look, I went through a near-death experience. Now that I'm doing all of this and I've studied so much about it, I understand I had to, so I can help so many other people that have gone through trauma. I had to go through a lifetime, 50 years, 54 years of self-sabotage, so I can help people that are going through the same thing. So I hope that all makes sense. I've shot around all over the place. I hope I didn't bore anyone. And if I have offended you in any of what I've discovered and the way I've come across, it wasn't meant to be like that. It's just what I've learned. But I do spend a lot of time, and my clients now spend a lot of time of, if we're with nature, I surf every day if I can. And when I'm out there, I I can do this with my eyes open, but I can close my eyes and I can feel and become the water, the molecules of the water and everything. I can just start feeling everything amazing and the energy around me, rather than just thinking that what I'm focusing on is what exists. So I'll leave it there. And I hope some people might have learned something. Please open yourself up to questions and ask me anything. It's been a bit of a different life, but we're all here for a purpose. There's a book in every single one of us. And I'm always open to learning and growing as well.
Okay, as we go to questions, please use the reactions button down the bottom of your screen, open it up, and the first thing that you'll see is raise your hand. So we've got the first hand raised was Giles. Giles, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
You have had quite some experience, and I am very appreciative. Wait a minute.
Thank you, Giles. It has been...
Yes, it's working. I want to congratulate you on the speech, and I know how difficult it is to be honest about the crap we go through. I've had a mixed background, nothing as mixed as yours, however, much less self-sabotage, and I have very good luck, and I am very pleased with that. And again, that luck is showing. Here I am listening to what you're telling me about how you're confirming so much that I've read, and I am delighted, and thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure. And this is the thing, like when I talk at a lot of men's groups. Women's groups haven't let me in yet because, well, you know, go figure. But when I do talk about this stuff, people say, wow, you've gotten through so much. If I understand that I had to go through all of that, so now I can help people of all walks of life. But a lot of clients might have, like I have clients that have been raised in families that have been very supportive, uplifted them, given them everything. Yet they the client turns to severe alcoholism or drug use to try and drown out reality. And then when we go and we uncover why their unconscious is so unhappy, we can go back to when they were 1 year old, 1 month old, and their dad, usually the dad, definitely can be the mum as well. But back then, and now we're in our 50s. I'm in my 50s. There's people older than me or younger, but back then, dads had to go to work to provide for the family. And so dads would be off there working 10, 15 hours a day. And what was happening to us as this tiny little 1 month old defenseless child is we're lacking this love from a dominant male figure in our life. So what tends to happen is we attached an unconscious emotion of abandonment and rejection to that, which didn't exist, but our unconscious didn't know. Yeah, it doesn't know the difference between real or unreal back then. Still doesn't now. We consciously tell it things, it believes us. Back then, we're open up to the world, seeing what's happening around us. This guy's never home. And then when he comes home, mum's saying, why aren't you home? And they're having, you know, there's negative energy between them. We're absorbing that and accepting it. So it doesn't matter if you haven't had a major trauma, yet you still feel unhappy, depressed, unachieved, not being able to achieve the happiness that you want. It's just an unconscious emotion that you've attached to your past that we can let go of now with knowing all this stuff. And right now we look around the world, or we look at our friends, and we just see mental health is out of control. Like people, they cannot keep, people try and book in with a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or even a holistic therapist. They can't get in for 6 months. So we understand now why, like I understand now at that unconscious, that holistic level, because I don't medicate anyone. Actually, people get off their medication by coming and understanding that they are, remember the quantum theory, they are creators. Things don't happen to me, they happen because of me. Even though I'm attracting things I don't want, it's because my unconscious says, I just think you want that. I don't think you don't want it. I just think you want it. So,
Begging your pardon,
Charles, thank you
Greg,
so much for
begging
sharing.
your pardon. Do you do past life regression when you're going back? You notice it? Okay, so that's the full story as far as I'm concerned. Sorry, I interrupted Christina. She should talk.
I just go where the client needs to go. I don't embed anything. I don't put anything in. So quite often when we do have a happy family environment, yet someone's still unhappy, is attracting the wrong people, the wrong opportunities or whatever, they'll go back to wherever they want. And it's quite, and between you and I, it's quite refreshing to know that they're not all kings and queens. They go back to people that have lived off the land, and where they find the messages that they're supposed to learn. And this is why I love my job so much, is because I never know what's going to happen. I use the modalities and the systems, and I connect at that superconscious. We're all connected, as quantum says. So I feel their energy. I feel what they're going through, and it's as if I'm living a movie of their life when we go back together. And that's why I love my job so much. But yeah, past life regression, and they're not all kings and queens. Some of them are. Actually, I haven't met a king or queen yet. I've met people that have been quite high up.
Thanks, Craig. I was reliving a movie of your life all the way through that. Thanks very much. I'm wondering how much memory is connected with emotion, because if we have to learn a lesson from what we're going through, we have to be able to remember it at the right time and feel it, you know. People can sort of have an emotion about something maybe that they've misinterpreted that somebody said to them, and they hang on to that for a long time. And if they don't remember it, they may never come to that moment when they realize they made a mistake. So, and you're regressing people, and you know, you're working with their memory. You couldn't release that if you weren't.
Yes, exactly right. Perfect. Good, very, very good question. So what happens is our unconscious is responsible for running 95% of my life. It's that next energy level out from me, which I feel energy. However, its job is attaching an emotion to everything. It is 100% emotional, your unconscious. It just believes what I tell it, or it believes what I accepted back in those early days when I couldn't stand up and say, stop hitting mum or stop hitting dad. You know, it just accepts it all. So what happens is when we regress, or when you go back, you close your eyes and I coach you through to distract your consciousness through breathing or wherever, body temperatures and things. I can say, I want to go all the way back to the very first time you felt, and I'll say, so because I have a questionnaire on how people feel. You feel unworthy, unloved, you don't matter, you're not good enough, you can't do it. You can't do that. You're unmotivated, you're anxious, you're withdrawn, depressed, angry, weak, afraid, guilty. I want you to go all the way back where your emotions were started to attach yourself to the very first time. They just go bang. Now, they'll go straight back to, they may be 15 years old, and I'll say, what's happening? They will understand exactly what's happening around them, as if they're not, they're the movie, they're watching the movie, but they're actually sitting up the top here, so they see the whole forest for the trees. Does that make sense? So I'll give you a real quick example. Someone comes to me to stop smoking. Smoking is a symptom, right? So there's two times of they started to be a smoker. One was when they started. The second was an unconscious acceptance that I am going to be a smoker. So this one young lady, she, we went back to, she was about 1 month. She was in a pram. Dad would come home from work. So she knew all of this, okay, at 1 month old. She's going through it. Dad would come home from work. Mum was excited. They'd go in the pram, push her around the block. And then they'd come back and they would leave her alone at the front door, and they just leave her alone. So she's this tiny being, can't communicate, can't even eat solid food. She's just feeling, she's looking up and she's seeing these two people from up, and the love and the laughter and everything, and then it's just gone. So she starts freaking out at that age. What's going on? massive abandonment issue. She can't keep a relationship. So smoking's just a mask, right? She can't keep a relationship. She can't keep a job. All this self-sabotage she's gone through because she's abandoned by mum and dad every day, right? So then we pull her out of it and we say, okay, so what's happening? What other things are happening around you at that moment? And she goes, she says, what's happening is they're leaving me at the front door and they're walking 3 meters away to talk to the neighbour. The neighbour's an older lady and she's always gardening out the front. So they're not really abandoning me. I'm feeling that because the energy was there and then it's gone. But they're just talking to the lady 3 meters away. See how young, how minds attach that unconscious abandonment emotion. And I say, so where does smoking come into it? The old lady would always light up a smoke when mum and dad would go and chat to them next door. So at the age of 1 month old, she accepted she had to be a smoker so she wouldn't be abandoned. This is how amazing this stuff is, right? And I'm excited about it. I'm not happy that she's gone through that. Please don't misunderstand me. But it's amazing that we can go back and she can understand it. And we go, okay, well, now you're 35 years old. You're a big girl now. You've done this and done that and all this sort of stuff. So at 1 month old, we can let go of that emotion, can't we? Because you're understanding the bigger picture. And we don't have to smoke because we don't need their attention to not be abandoned. So that's how our unconscious works. Yeah. And so you can go back to different lives as well because your unconscious is attaching good, bad emotion to everything.
Or if it can go up.
Okay.
That's okay. I'll just concentrate.
I wondered if you have ever heard of Robin Land song.
Robin Land song.
Yes. She has an interview on Buddha at the gas pump. And she was a young 8-year-old who was kidnapped and taken to Rhodesia during the war. And she speaks about, and then she was shot there. And she speaks about her recovery and all she had to go through. And it's very similar to your experience. And I think that her process might be of interest to you.
I've written her name down. I'll check her out. Yeah. Yep.
All right. Yeah, this is just something. Mainly, I've throughout my life I had issues getting very angry with people. How they treat me, and I really let it get to me. And I've tried for many years, decades, trying to figure out how to overcome that. I've tried different things, asking spirit for guidance, meditating, things like that, and they all work to varying degrees, but never quite satisfactory. And I wrote a month ago on the Friday Afterlife report, the FAR report. There was a guy, a psychiatrist, I think, who gave the advice that when we do that, when we dwell on these things, then we give these people power over us. And at an intellectual level, I've realized that for a long time, but I don't know why. But at that time, I decided to, I realized that if I redirect the energy of my anger towards refusing to give them that power over me, then that might work. And it's been a month so far, and I'm still working on it, but it seems to be a real positive approach. And I bring that up because it's very similar to what you're saying. The only thing I would add is the aspect of redirecting the energy of the anger to not give them that power. Maybe you said that. Maybe that's part of your message and I missed it, but I just was just throwing that out there.
Fantastic. So thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
I help a lot of people with anger management, especially military and emergency services personnel, nurses, people like that. But what we need to understand is what I was saying is for you to redirect energy. People say overcoming that. You're still living with the problem that you've accepted. So what we need to do is find out why unconsciously you have accepted a label that someone or something has placed on you that gets you angry, that builds that anger. Because once we've found that, you no longer live with that anger. It's just, it's people think it's a selfish way to be, but it's not. Because if we understand you're at that quantum level, you come on in, you're conceived into a mass, then you go through life. When your body deteriorates and it stops working, we just transition back to that quantum. So you're here for one purpose. That one purpose is you. Because if you become the best you that you can be, those that love you even more because you become a better version of you. Those that don't like you will never like you. So that's okay. Let them be on their path. But what I find is exactly what you were saying is we're looking for things outside of us to try and deal with this limitation. And I'm saying limitation, just be like, can't be calm, can't be relaxed, let other people be them, nothing bothers me. Instead of living like that, we're looking at ways of overcoming the label of I have anger management. Does that make sense? So to release the emotion that started it, remember that girl that went all the way back and it was something so simple that she had attached that emotion to that was no longer present today. She lets it go. Entire life changes. Stops smoking, stops drinking, starts getting out there. Every morning I see her now, she's out, she's posting on Facebook, she's out there with the dogs, running on the beach, loving life. She's got being asked out by this guy who's just feels like a soul partner because she's not trying to overcome what she feels as a limitation. She's let go of why she put that limitation on her. And, I wish you the best of luck. And it's your journey, so that's the best thing about it.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Okay, so quickly, if you've, I'll put it in here now. It's called, my business is called Hows, HOW''S, Your Head Space. So if headspace is 2 words, if you Google that, you'll come across my company, you'll see my story, programs that I offer, and I'll just quickly share that with you now, if that's okay. Here's some programs that I've created that really allow people to rip out these roots. So there's a 3-week unconscious identity alignment. That's with people that just feel as if they, so this is the company there, How's Your Headspace, feel as if they're just not living what they're supposed to be doing. They keep doing all these other stuff and they're just not feeling happy. There's a hypnotherapy program which doesn't align people but allows them to go back, the transgression stuff, connecting with their superconscious, their spirit, their higher self to understand. And they talk to themselves and they get messages from themselves that are just so overwhelmingly perfect for them. So there's that 5-week course. And there's an 8-week realignment online, one-on-one session, which basically releases everything that's limiting them from their past, goes back through generations of limiting family beliefs through the family tree because your beliefs aren't yours. We've accepted them from our family, and then realigns us with our purpose and our future. And then I've got ongoing coaching, which is everything business, relationships, and self-help. And then I've also got a program for veterans and emergency services as well. So the company's called How's Your Head Space. Jump on there, have a look, and please, I'm very approachable. Send me messages, emails. Join me on Facebook. I've got a Facebook group called Your Mental Health Recharge. Or Greg Keily, Keily on Facebook there. I've got a professional profile there. I post every single morning, tips, guides, things like that. But I've stopped doing that. Now I'm just going to be doing it on that page. But you can friend me and I can send you the link. So reach out. I reach out to everyone too because I'm open to learning. There's a few of you there that I would love to talk to about connecting with my higher self a lot more. I do it, but I would like to get messages. I'd love to be able to speak to people in that quantum realm, people who have deceased. I'd love to be able to, I can feel them, but I can't talk to them. I can't get the messages through. So I'd love coaching in that, if someone can help me on that.
Well, Greg, we have somebody here with us today, Craig Hogan. Craig, can you speak very quickly to your program?
Sure.
Because a lot of other people here might be interested as well.
Sure. What it does, Greg, is it teaches people to use self-hypnosis. So what I had studied people, psychotherapists who had been successful in having afterlife communications. And so I studied 3 different methods and discovered that what they were doing was allowing the person to go into a state of mind in which they could let the communications come through. And what they were doing was required a license, a state license. So what I wanted to do is to give people the opportunity to do that themselves without having a state licensed psychotherapist. So I developed a self-hypnosis training program online that anyone can go through, and it's 86% successful. And it does help people to have afterlife communications by putting them into that space where they can allow the person to communicate with them. So I invite anybody to go through it. It's at afterlifeinstitute.org/self-guided.
Because I teach people to actually go outwards.
Mm-hmm.
And once I'm out there, I'm fully open to, I feel nature, and we do astral travel. We go to different planets. We go everywhere. But for some reason, I'm not connecting. Well, maybe I should just focus a bit more on it, which maybe I'm not doing. So, but I'll definitely check it out. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, good.
Yeah, good.
My experience has been with grief that for a period of time before the anniversary of the transition, there's an anxiety that builds up in my body, even if I'm not consciously aware that the anniversary is coming. And if I check in with myself and look at a calendar, I can go, oh, that's what all that anxiety in my body is. It's the anniversary of the death. And for about 3 years, and I thought, I'm just weird. And for about 3 years, I led a grief support group. And in the group, the other people, whatever their grief event was, they also experienced that. This anxiety that builds up in the body in anticipation of the date, even if they're not consciously aware of the date. But the actual date is okay. In other words, there isn't the anxiety, the actual date of the anniversary, but there is building up to it. And do you have any ideas around that? It would be a real help with grief if there were some way to deal with that anxiety that builds up prior to the death anniversary.
Yes, I totally understand. And that's because at the moment, at the anniversary, and after that, you unconsciously know you got through it. But remember I was saying the body builds up a habit. And for 20 years, my body was getting triggered and going through those same habits. So that date that you've attached, you have attached the emotions around that date. So as it's building up and coming closer, you don't even have to know the time of day or the date. Your body is reacting the way it has because it's been used to doing it for however many years. It's a habit. It's a physical habit. Yeah. So once you understand that it's a physical habit, you need to break the habit. And the best way is, again, the same thing, is to release the emotions around the event. So the habit just drifts away. And so when I was still panicking and still going through this, it still took me a while. It would get less and less and less and less. And then now it just doesn't happen at all. But my body was still in that habit mode of, this is how I react when this situation happens. So the date's there. You've attached the emotion to the date around the event. You'll keep doing it. It's going to keep happening until you release the emotions you attach to that event. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and so get someone to guide you back and let it go. And you'll find that when the event happens, you'll feel, because there's like a spark and then there's fuel. So where there's a spark, there's fuel. But imagine if there's no fuel and you're there with a lighter trying to light it and it just goes out. There's no fuel to go and build up. So the emotions are your fuel for you to act that way, react that way, start getting anxious, breathing, stressed, whatever. That's the fuel. If you release the fuel, the spark will still be there. The dates will still come around every year and you'll go, oh, hang on. There's that feeling again, but then it's gone. And then it'll just get less and less and less over time and it'll just won't exist. Yeah. Well, that's my experiences. I can only talk about it from my experience, what I've studied anyway. I hope that helps. Does that help?
Yes.
Great. That's